My name's Councillor June Molyneux and I'm chairing this committee. Please note that committee is being streamed live on YouTube and we have public speakers attending via Microsoft Teams as well as in person. If you're a member of the public who's registered to speak, you will have a time limit of up to 3 minutes. The legal officer will operate a stopwatch and confirm when your time runs out. You should then finish, or if you're in the middle of making a point, wind up within a few seconds and finish speaking. Otherwise, your microphone definitely will be muted. For ease, a pack has been prepared which contains the report, plans and presentation slides for each item to ensure that everyone can easily follow the agenda, and that's available online. After officers have presented reports and speakers have made their representations, I'll invite members to make any comments. When you want to speak, please raise your hand to indicate to me that you want to speak. When invited to speak, please turn your microphone on. Please turn it off when you finish speaking, and when speaking, please reference paragraph number to enable everyone to follow you. If the technology fails, I'll adjourn the meeting for a few minutes to try and resolve the issue, or if that's not possible, a new date and time will be organised. And then apologies have been received from Councillor Beaver, but Councillor Derbyshire is here as a substitute. Before we start, I would just like to say that item 3A has been taken off the agenda at short notice due to technical issues. Sorry it's been at the last minute, there's nothing else we could do. So if you're here for that item, please feel free to go now, and hopefully we'll see you again at the next meeting of the Planning Committee. So that's the Charnock Richard item, the first item. So if anybody's come for that, not really. No, you can't. No, you can't. It's as simple as that, no. I wish he'd put a bloody staple in these. In either case, you can hear me, of course you can. In either case, you must not seek to improperly influence a decision on the matter. Don't be silly, of course you can hear me. Right, planning applications to be determined. Sorry? Oh, sorry. You were a bit... Forgot about that, yes. 3A, thank you. 3B? You said 3A then. C. Planning applications to be determined. We've 8 items now. Plans to be considered. For the benefit of the public here tonight, the speaking arrangements for planning applications are as follows. Officers will summarise the report. Registered speakers will be invited to speak in the following order: objector, supporter, parish town councillor, ward councillor, applicant or agent. All registered speakers will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes, apart from a ward councillor who may speak for up to 5 minutes. In the event that all speakers are against the application, as chair, I will grant the applicant or representative a time extension. I would respectfully ask members of the public who have not registered to speak to remain quiet throughout the proceedings. With that, we go straight on to item 3B. Former BA site Group 1, pages 81 to 140, with an update on your addendum, although the recommendation stays the same. Adele's going to present this item, and I have no registered speakers. Adele.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. This application site is located to the north and west of Brookwood Way off Central Avenue in Buckshaw Village and forms part of the wider Group 1 site that's allocated under policies EP1 and HS1 of the Chorley Local Plan. It benefits from outline planning permission for a mixed use of employment and housing and forms the final 2 parcels of the Group 1 site to be developed, which members will be mindful is very much nearing completion. The application seeks planning permission for the erection of 80 dwellings with a mixture of houses and apartments, 30% of which would be affordable. The proposal also includes for vehicular access to be provided from Brookwood Way, a new drop-off and pick-up car parking area for use by the adjacent school, landscaping and other infrastructure. The proposal represents a departure from the development plan in that it would result in the development of the final parcels that are actually allocated for mixed use, with the rest of the site being developed with housing. There would therefore be no land remaining for employment uses, which conflicts with the mixed use allocation. There has been one neighbour objection received in relation to the proposal, which refers to a lack of capacity at local doctors, surgeries and schools. There are no outstanding objections from any of the technical consultees, with the proposal having been amended during the assessment period in order to address concerns raised by the local highway authority and the council's ecological advisors, and these are detailed in the committee report. Protracted negotiations have also taken place with regards to biodiversity enhancements, and the applicant has agreed to provide a financial contribution of £30,000 to deliver off-site improvements in the adjacent Buckshaw Wood and Pasture Biological Heritage Site. The most important policies in the determination of this application are Policy 4 of the Central Lancashire Core Strategy relating to housing land supply and policies HS1 and EP4 of the Chorley Local Plan in relating to the allocation of the site for mixed-use development. Policy 4 of the Core Strategy sets out the minimum housing requirements, and members will be very familiar with that policy given recent planning applications. And again, it's set out in length in the committee report. Recent planning decisions in the borough have demonstrated that the council does not currently have a 5-year deliverable housing supply, and therefore policy 4 of the core strategy is out of date. It is not considered that policies HS1 and EP4 of the local plan are out of date because their respective purposes are to ensure a sufficient range of sites are available for housing and employment purposes, and there remains an employment supply in line with policy 10 of the Central Lancashire Core Strategy, which is also not out of date. The National Planning Policy Framework is clear that where the policies which are most important for determining the application are out of date, a planning permission must be granted unless either the application of policies in the framework that protect areas or assets of particular importance provides a clear reason for refusing the development, or any adverse impacts of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when assessed against the policies of the framework when it's taken as a whole. This is known as the tilted balance. As one of the most important policies in the determination of the application is out of date, the tilted balance applies in the determination of this application. The housing allocation for this site identifies that the overall allocation would deliver 761 units, 817 have already been approved through reserve matters consents, and this proposal would further increase this to 897 units. It should be noted, however, that housing allocation numbers detailed in policy HS1 are indicative, and the housing requirement is a minimum to ensure enough housing is provided through the local plan period. It is considered that in this case, the greater level of housing cannot fail to comply with the development plan, given that there is no express limitation upon the number of dwellings as allocated in the site-specific policy and within the wider plan. Housing figures, as members will be aware, are not to function as ceilings. It is not considered that there would be any unacceptable adverse impacts from the proposal with regards to residential amenity, highway safety, matters of ecology, drainage, or upon the character of the area. The adverse impacts of the development relate primarily to its conflict with the mixed-use allocation of the site, namely policy EP1 of the Chorley local plan. It's considered that the proposal complies with the spirit of policy 10 of the Central Lancashire Core Strategy in providing additional housing over and above that identified for this site within policy HS1. It's been demonstrated that there would remain a sufficient quantity and variety of employment land within the borough following the loss of this site for employment. As such, the conflict with policy EP1 is only given limited weight in the planning balance. In terms of benefits, the provision of new housing would bring construction and supply chain jobs, places for the economically active to live, increased local spend and a greater choice in the local market. These benefits have not been quantified and would apply to any housing development of this scale, but are still considerable. The proposal would boost the supply of housing in a situation where there is no 5-year housing supply and an under-provision of affordable housing. And as a result, moderate weight can be given to the economic benefits and significant weight to the social benefits. The provision of open space and biodiversity gain contributions are neutral considerations because they are needed to make the development acceptable. That said, the 10% net gain in biodiversity is not yet a legal requirement in planning legislation, but the applicant has nonetheless agreed to achieve this through negotiations with the local planning authority. It is not considered that the adverse impacts of the proposed development related to the conflict with policy EP1 of the local plan would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the economic and social benefits of the proposals, and as such the application is recommended for approval subject to conditions and a section 106 legal agreement with the provisions detailed in your report. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Adele. Over to you, members. Somebody out there. Councillor Marwood.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Yeah, I'll start off. I've no objection to this application. Some people might be surprised there's any land left in Buckshaw Village, but this will be the last bit of it, and as I say, I have no objection to it. Happy to support it.
Thank you. Councillor Whittaker.
Very interesting what Adele said. Very interesting what Adele said. It was extremely complicated, however, over about 15 pages. And I couldn't follow all of it, except the bit that I did pick up was about sustainability. And is this application sustainable in the broadest sense of what we're all supposed to be talking about now? Because the documentation, which I'm sure was absolutely professional and correct, I couldn't follow all of it, and I think if we're going to get that sort of explanation of an application, then we ought to have a chance of studying it before we get to the committee level, Chair.
Well, yeah.
With respect.
Just to respond, Councillor Whittaker, it is a complicated assessment and it's very much set out in the main committee report, which the papers have been published. My presentation is simply a summary of what you've already had. So I've tried to condense the 18 pages or so into 1.5 sides. So the nub of the assessment is already. From a sustainability point of view, I think members would agree that Buckshaw Village is probably one of the most sustainable locations in the borough. Thank you, Chair.
Just like to say, I'd second what Councillor Morwood said. I can't see that it's going to make that much difference to Buckshaw Village, and I support this development.
Yeah, I was just going to second the proposal, but Councillor Sherwood beat me to it. I'm quite happy with this. I see no problem at all. It is a sustainable location and it is appropriate development, particularly with the tilted balance that we're now dealing with. Thank you, Chair.
There you go. If all those in favour, green button, against red, abstains yellow. Okay. Taz? Who's not voted? Councillor Whittaker, you've not voted. You're all right now. Yes, it has. It's come through.
Thank you, Chair. So members of the committee have decided to approve the application subject to conditions and a Section 106 legal agreement. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, item 3C, Birkacre Nurseries, Birkacre Road, pages 141 to 158. With an update on your addendum, even though the recommendation remains the same. Amy is going to present this item, and I've no registered speakers. Amy?
Thanks, Chair. The application site is situated within the green belt and is an established garden centre. The application seeks to extend the parking area of the site into an existing outdoor storage area and to replace an existing glasshouse with a storage building. Paragraph 149 of the framework allows for the replacement of a building, provided the new building is in the same use and is not materially larger than the one it replaces, and the proposal satisfies this exception. It should be noted that Lancashire County Council initially objected to the scheme as it originally included a new service access of Birkacre Road to the south of the site, and the required visibility displays could not be achieved. In addition, LCC also raised concerns in relation to the size of the parking bays and the turning aisle. Since these comments were received, the application has been amended and the access has been completely removed from the scheme. The parking bays now meet the required standards, including an aisle of 6 metres to enable vehicles to safely enter and exit the parking spaces. The proposal itself does not generate any additional parking demand, and as the matters of concern have been addressed or no longer form part of the scheme, it is considered that the proposal is acceptable in highway safety terms. Part of the site falls within the Yarrow Valley Park Biological Heritage Site. However, this area of the site is already laid to hard standing and is utilised as part of the garden centre for storage and servicing, and is not a typical feature or habitat of a biological heritage site. There would be no adverse impacts on this site, and the development would be carried out in accordance with the approved construction environmental management plan. There would be no impact on the amenity of residential properties in the area as a result of the development, nor would it be detrimental to the character and appearance of the area. It is recommended to members that the application is approved subject to the suggested conditions. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Over to you, members. Councillor Hilton.
Thank you, Chair. This is obviously quite a popular local business I think we need to support. Obviously, the concerns from Lancashire County Council have now been addressed, and there aren't any concerns. There's no adverse environmental impact, amenity on local residents, or the character of the area, so I'm happy to support this proposal. Thank you.
Councillor Sherwood.
Thank you, Chair. As a frequent visitor to that area, I've seen the existing problems with parking. The conditions are being met, the concerns that were raised. I look forward to any new development, and I have no objections whatsoever to this.
Anyone else wish to comment? Do you want to say something, Adele? Adele. Oh, Councillor Heath first, and then
I thought you
Adele.
forgot me. I was going to second the
Forget you,
recommendation.
Councillor
I'm going to
Heath.
second the recommendation, Chair.
That's third in there.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's a point of clarification. It looks like the gremlins have got in the system for the addendum, and just to clarify that, the first condition, that is number 24, should be numbered number 1. Not quite sure what happened there, but just a point of clarification.
Okay, thanks, man. So, anyone else wish to speak? If not, I'll move to the vote, please. Right, off you go. Okay, Taz.
Thank you, Chair. So members have decided to approve Plan Commission, granted subject to conditions in respect of the extension of car park and erection of storage building at Birkacre Nurseries Limited. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, item 3D. Springfields, Sandy Lane, Mawdesley, pages 159 to 204 with an update on your addendum. Amy is going to present this item, and I have two registered speakers, an objector, Claire Corns, and the agent who's joining us virtually, Chris Wheatham. Chris, can you speak and hear us?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I can hear you.
Thank you.
Chair, can I just check? Are you getting an echo?
Sorry?
Are you getting an echo?
No.
Are you getting an echo?
No, not at all. Are you?
Yes.
That's something we need to
So
look at.
apologies.
Okay. Amy, can you present the report, please?
So the application site is situated within the green belt. It was previously a horticultural site, but over time various activities have taken place and a lawful B to industrial use was established through appeal in around 2010. Since then, the glass houses have been removed and other uses have taken place on site. The planning unit itself is a mixed use and the land is previously developed. The application proposes to demolish all of the existing buildings on site and to erect 5 detached dwellings. These would have a linear arrangement along Sandy Lane, each having its own access. The officer report establishes that the redevelopment of this site for the residential scheme proposed would have no greater impact on the openness of the green belt than the existing development and would therefore meet the exception to inappropriate development in the green belt. In addition, the proposal would result in a visual enhancement of the site without detriment to the character and appearance of the area. Appropriate ecological surveys have been carried out and the impact on protected species, i.e. bats, would be mitigated through various measures and a natural England licence may be required. Lancashire County Council raised no objection to the proposal on highway safety grounds and the separation distances achieved between neighbouring residential properties ensures that their amenity would not be adversely affected. Whilst part of the wider site to the north is identified as being susceptible to surface water flooding, the application site itself is at low risk and drainage would be secured by way of a planning condition. The application triggers an affordable housing payment in lieu of on-site provision, which it is recommended to members that the application is approved subject to the suggested conditions under Section 106 agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. Claire, would you like to speak now?
Thank you. Speaking on... Sorry.
You're okay. No, you're okay. Don't worry.
Speaking on behalf of my parents who reside at Brookfield House, Sandy Lane, immediately adjacent to the boundary of the proposed development, we wish to object to the proposed development of the 5 new large detached houses on the grounds of overdevelopment of the green belt open land in a conservation area that provides a safe habitat to numerous wildlife. In particular, HT1 and HT2 are proposed on an area of garden next to my parents' property adjoining their boundary. This impacts severely on their visual, peaceful enjoyment of the surrounding countryside and also impacts on the noise and vehicles using the single-track road. HT1 and HT2 as proposed include balconies at first floor level which immediately overlook my parents' garden and their property. In summary, we believe that the development of the 5 large detached houses is not in keeping with the rural location where there are currently only 4 houses on the lane. It is a single track lane and currently Springfields is 1 property with a barn to the side on a yard that, as Amy said, has been used for light industrial over the years, but there hasn't been very much use there recently, and there's only 1 residential house, which is separated by a field and garden from my parents at the moment. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Chris, would you like to speak now?
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you very much. It's very difficult, obviously, to try and convince the committee within 3 minutes where there was a serious objection that's just been lodged there. I'd just like to address some of those points in particular. It's not in a conservation area. It's not being used for light industrial. it has a lawful permission for general industrial. Can I read it out? Industrial engineering uses including manufacturing, design, repair and testing of machinery, plant and engineering apparatus, metal fabrication and associated storage and parking of vehicles and plant. That is unrestricted. Unrestricted hours, unrestricted manpower, unrestricted vehicles going in and out the site. In addition, there is also permission to store metal buckets, skip compactors, stone, pipe work, both plastic and concrete, road signs, and ballast material, plant and machinery, also unrestricted. With regard to the objection, the nearest property is 21 metres from the objector's parents' house. That's the side, not front to back, side to side, and there are no side-facing windows in the first house proposed. This is not a green space. This is an industrial site, which has been a thorn in the council's side for the best part of 20 years. There are 2 dwellings there already, so the net increase is actually only 3. When the officers asked us to amend the scheme, we did. When they asked us for enhanced ecological surveys, we did. When they asked us to change the house places, we did. And in that respect, the officers' report correctly identifies this as appropriate redevelopment of the industrial site in the Greenbelt. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, members. Councillor Whittaker.
Thanks, Chair. I don't know, I've looked at the plan and I can't quite identify where this is in relation to the rest of... Have we got any other plans that will show us anything? Have we got any other plans? All I'm looking at is a sort of thing at the end of page 170. Is that all we've got?
Councillor Whittaker, you should have the presentations that have been circulated that'll have more details and photographs on.
Well, anyway, I haven't. I don't think I can quickly turn it up, but for members' benefit. But there are some concerns there about the residents. There are concerns that we've heard from neighbours. There are concerns from the parish council, who are not made lightly, who they know the area much better than I do. And what I'd like to propose before it gets approved, and I've heard Mr. Wheatman's comments about it being a thorn in the council's side for some reason. I don't quite understand that. But I'd like to propose that we have a site visit, Chair, then we can be very clear about exactly what we're talking about here. An industrial site, it's in the green. On one side the report talks about the green belt, on the other one it talks about it's an industrial site, and we heard a list of comments from the applicant saying why it should be. I think it deserves a site visit, Chair, and I'd like to have a look at that before I vote on it. I hope somebody will second me.
Councillor.
Well, thank you very much, Councillor Whittaker. I do agree with what you've said. I've lived in that area a long, long time now. I do know Sandy Lane well. I do know the site well. I know the history to the site. And I think it would be as well if we did go and have a site visit. It would open your eyes to how narrow the road is, to where people want to put residential houses in a real rural area. I'm totally against doing anything like this. I do appreciate that it's been an industrial site and I appreciate all the things that could go on that site at this present time. But if we keep giving in to this, as was alluded to at the last meeting, we will keep going on forevermore. So I'd like you to come to a site visit if you could agree to that, and you will see the difficulty that it will cause. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hilton.
Thank you, Chair. in terms of planning policy, this development, as set out in quite a lot of detail by the officers, is acceptable. And whilst I do have some sympathy with the objector, there are no clear planning reasons that I think I'm going to refuse this. So whilst I do have sympathy, I'm going to propose officer recommendations on this. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Derbyshire. Can you put your microphone on, please?
I'd like to second that as well, please, because as Councillor Hilton has said, there are no planning objections to this, and it's that needs to be the objection, really, not the other ephemeral things that go around with it. Thank you.
Proposer and a seconder for the officer recommendation. All those in favour of a site visit, can you please show? Yes. Green if you want a site visit, red if you don't, white if you, yellow if you want to abstain. Taz.
Thank you, Chair. So that motion has been refused, so we will now move to vote for the officer recommendation.
Okay. All those in favour of the officer recommendation, please show. Okay, Taz.
Thank you, Chair. So members of the committee have decided to approve planning permission, grant subject to conditions and a legal agreement in respect of Springfields, Sandy Lane, Mawdesley. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. If you've come for that item, please feel free to go. Oh, and somebody better bring Councillor Butler, he's here. Bring you back. Item 3E, New Street, Mawdesley. Adele's going to present this item. I have no registered speakers. Adele.
Thank you, Chair. The application site is located within the settlement area of Mawdesley and is allocated for employment under policy EP1 of the Chorley local plan. It was previously occupied by a vehicle repair garage and workshop and the associated outdoor storage and manoeuvring areas. The building has since been demolished and the site now largely consists of open scrubland. Members may recall that outline planning permission was granted in November 2021 for the erection of 4 dwellings and associated garages and parking following the demolition of the building, with all matters reserved save for access. The application now seeks approval of the reserved matters associated with the outline consent and includes details of appearance, layout, scale and landscaping. Details of emission rates, materials, boundary treatment, site levels, broadband strategy and a remediation strategy that was to be secured via the imposition of conditions at outline stage have also been submitted to meet those requirements. The submitted plans identify 4 detached 2-storey dwellings laid out in an L-shaped pattern of development, with the dwellings on plots 1 and 2 orientated side on to the dwellings on New Street to the west, and plots 3 and 4 are backing on to the rear of the newly built dwellings to the east on Aslan Drive, which is part of the Jones Homes development. Each dwelling would have 4 bedrooms and garaging. Mawdesley Parish Council have objected to the proposal in relation to perceived adverse impacts upon drainage and sewers, which they state are overwhelmed and will therefore create further pressure on the overwhelmed infrastructure. They state the development is inappropriate as it is in a flood risk area. There have also been 2 neighbour objections received, which refer to loss of light, privacy and overlooking. The proposal has been revised during the assessment process to move a proposed detached garage away from the shared boundary with one of the dwellings on New Street. There are no outstanding objections from technical consultees, and the proposed landscaping scheme has been amended during the consideration of the application to include more native species as part of the landscaping proposals. Garage sizes have also been increased in size at the request of the Highway Authority. The acceptability of the principle of development and the access arrangements have clearly been established by the grant of outline planning permission. It's considered that the 4 detached properties now proposed would assimilate with the built form of Mawdesley, and the dwellings would be largely concealed from public view in any event given the position of the site. And the addition of the 4 dwellings would have negligible impact in terms of the character of the village. The proposal meets the Council's guidelines for interface distances with existing dwellings that's around the site and between each proposed dwelling, and it is considered that there would be no unacceptable impact from loss of light, loss of outlook or loss of privacy. Despite the comments of the Parish Council, it should be noted that the application site is not located in an area that is at risk of flooding identified on the Environment Agency mapping data. The application is supported by a drainage report that has assessed the ground conditions of the site as being unsuitable for ground infiltration of surface water, and so it will be diverted to an existing watercourse within the site boundary at a restricted rate. Foul water is proposed to connect with the existing foul sewer in New Street. United Utilities, the local lead flood authority and the Council's building control officers will need to approve the proposed drainage work under separate legislation and prior to its installation. In planning terms, the proposed drainage arrangements are considered to be acceptable as the proposal meets national planning policy requirements. Other issues relating to ecology, trees and parking arrangements are considered to be acceptable, and the application is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Adele. Over to you, members. Councillor Boardman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, we've seen this site come up several times. It's a couple of years since it came up for the outline application. It's a small site off New Street in the village of Mawdesley, which some of us know very well. When it came up originally at this planning committee, I made a comment about the access. I still am hesitant about the suitability of the access, but Lancashire County Council are happy with it. Therefore, I've got to let that one slide. I'm in favour of the application. I like to see that the applicant has spaced the dwellings out on the site appropriately. There's plenty of room between each property. There's also some quite nice open spaces and some ecological enhancements on that site. It is basically a hard-core up site with a small warehouse on at the moment. This will be an improvement to the site. It is in the centre of the village. It's a sustainable site. It's within walking distance of all the infrastructure, and it's in the village settlement area. So I will move to support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor France.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say I'd like to second
Microphone.
no reason for refusal.
Okay. Anyone else wish to comment? Okay. Councillor Heaton, sorry.
Well, I was going to second, but I third it.
You keep being picked at the post.
Well, I wasn't before.
Okay. No other comments? I'll move to the vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. So members have decided to grant reserved matters consent subject to conditions in respect of 20 New Street, Mawdesley. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Item 3F. Preston, Clayton-Le-Woods, pages 243 to 274, with an update on your addendum. Amy is going to present this item, and I have no registered speakers. I did all that without my microphone, sorry.
The application seeks full planning permission for the erection of a 2-storey building comprising of 7 self-contained supported living units, staff living unit and communal areas, and 1 individual detached bungalow, along with associated driveway and parking, following the demolition of the existing buildings. The application site is currently vacant and most recently provided a residential institution offering accommodation and training for young adults with learning disabilities. The site is located within the settlement area of Clayton-Le-Woods and is previously developed land in a sustainable location where there is a presumption in favour of sustainable development as set out in the framework and Chorley local plan. There are no policies in place that would protect the retention of the existing buildings, whilst the site would remain in the same use following its redevelopment. The proposed buildings would be of a modern design in traditional form. The apartment building would be the most prominent and would be of a greater height and mass than the existing building. Although it would be more prominent than the existing buildings on site, it would not have an unduly discordant presence within the street scene, whilst the retention of peripheral trees would help to filter views of the development and would soften the visual impact alongside the proposed landscaping scheme. As a result, there would be no harmful impact to the character or in relation to the setting of designated heritage assets on the opposite side of Preston Road. In relation to the impact on amenity of neighbouring occupiers, it is noted that there is already an existing impact from the buildings on site. Although the proposed apartment building would be of a greater scale, it is considered that the development would have no unacceptable detrimental impact on residential amenity in consideration of the current situation, subject to the inclusion of some obscure glazed windows. The council parking standards would be met, and LCC Highways have assessed the scheme and raised no objection. It is therefore considered that the proposed development would not have a significant impact on highway safety, capacity or amenity in the immediate vicinity of the site. There would also be secure bicycle storage on site. There are no ecological concerns in relation to the site that cannot be overcome by suitable mitigation, and the site is not in an area of flood risk, whilst a surface water drainage scheme has been submitted and accepted by United Utilities. Overall, the proposed development is considered to be in accordance with the policies of the development plan and is recommended for approval, subject to conditions and a Section 106 agreement to secure off-site provision of public open space. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Right, over to you, members. Thanks, Councillor Wizard. Councillor Sherwood, who had her hand up.
I wholly support this. It's a way that people are being supported in a different way. So, the fact it's a two-storey building, well, most buildings are two-storey. Fully support it.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else wish to comment? If not, I'll move to the vote. Councillor Heath.
I noticed there's a few trees to be removed from the site, and from what I read, they're not TPO'd or anything. I take it they're just not necessary. Or they're being removed to build the building, I assume.
Any comments? No.
Yes, on 58 it is, paragraph 58.
Page.
Page 90.
Did say that.
They're being removed to accommodate the development, and as the report says, a landscaping scheme will need to be provided to ensure that there's adequate compensatory landscaping.
Yeah, tomorrow, so there'll be some new planting to compensate for the loss. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, that's fine.
Anyone else wish to comment? If not, I'll move to the vote. Sorry, Councillor Moore, but I couldn't
It's
see
okay,
your
I
hand
wasn't sure
from
if it
here.
had been seconded or not.
Yeah, it has been seconded.
Oh, in that case, I won't. Getting
Okay.
But I will say, I mean, supported living accommodation is in short supply,
Yeah.
and I'm all in favour of bringing young adults. I don't know if it's young adults or older adults, but whoever. We've got various difficulties bringing them back into the community. I'm all for it, so happy to support.
So, if there's no other comments, I'll move to the vote, please. Councillor Whitacre.
I haven't voted.
Computer says no.
Sorry, I did press the button.
Sometimes it doesn't. I don't think it picks up. Okay, Taz.
Thank you, Chair. So, committee have unanimously agreed to grant planning permission subject to conditions and a Section 106 agreement to secure an off-site contribution towards public open space provision in respect of Higher Morris Farm 595 Preston Road. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 3G, vacant land off Hilltop Lane, Whittle-Le-Woods, pages 275 to 296. Adele's going to present this item. And I have two registered speakers, Parish Councillor Peter Higham and the applicant or agent Chris Betteridge. Adele, do you want to present the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. This site is located to the southeast of Whittle Hill Quarry on Hilltop Lane, where the gradient of the site slopes down steeply towards Hilltop Lane. The site is open land with grasses, some well-established trees and other wild plants. The application site forms part of a much larger designation covered by Policy BNE3 of the Chorley Local Plan as land west of M61, Whittle-Le-Woods, to be safeguarded for future development needs beyond the plan period, which runs to 2026. The northern part of the site is characterised by mature trees and steep slopes together with post and wire fencing. The southern part of the site is more level and a stone wall extends along the southern and eastern boundaries, separate and adjacent domestic garden areas to the east. There is an existing site access from Hilltop Lane. Planning permission in principle was refused under delegated authority in March 2021 for the erection of two dwellings due to conflict with Policy BNE3 of the local plan in relation to safeguarded site. This is a material consideration in the determination of this proposal, which represents a resubmission of the previously refused proposal. Again, seeks permission in principle for the erection of two dwellings. Members, however, will be mindful of the step change in the situation with regard to planning policy since that time, and the considerations in the determination of a permission in principle application is restricted to location, land use and amount of development. Technical matters such as highway safety, potential harm to amenity, heritage assets, trees, etc. can only be considered at technical details consent stage. 3 neighbour objections have been received which raise many issues which are not material considerations when determining a permission in principle application, such as access, highway safety and loss of trees. The responses do, however, refer to the site not being identified for development in the local plan and references made to previous planning refusals. Whittle-Le-Woods Parish Council have objected to the proposal, raising similar issues as detailed in neighbour responses that do not form material considerations in the determination of the application. They do, however, refer to the land not being identified for building in the local plan and assert that it should therefore be refused until such time that it is. Given the nature of the proposal, technical consultees have not been consulted, although United Utilities have provided advice to the applicant on details required should they submit a technical details consent application in the future. Policy 4 of the Central Lancashire Core Strategy and Policy BNE3 of the Chorley Local Plan are the most important policies for determining the application. Policy 4 of the Core Strategy sets out the minimum housing requirements for the plan area, as set out in length in the committee report and together with recent planning appeal decisions, which have demonstrated that the council does not have a 5-year deliverable supply of housing. And as I said earlier on this evening, Policy 4 of the Core Strategy is therefore out of date. The erection of 2 dwellings on this open greenfield site would not meet with any of the exceptions to inappropriate development as set out in the framework and would therefore be inappropriate development within the greenbelt or open countryside, and so the proposal conflicts with Policy BNE3 of the Chorley Local Plan. Paragraph 143D of the framework sets out that when defining greenbelt boundaries, plans should make clear that safeguarded land is not allocated for development at the present time. Planning permission for permanent development of safeguarded land should only be granted following an up-to-date plan which proposes the development. Policy BNE3 is consistent with the framework in this respect. However, the boundaries of settlements and safeguarded land to which they relate were established based on meeting the housing requirement in Policy 4 of the Core Strategy, which is out of date. This ultimately means that Policy BNE3 of the local plan is also out of date. The National Planning Policy Framework is clear that where policies which are the most important for determining the application are out of date, planning permission must be granted unless either the application of policies in the framework that protect areas or assets of particular importance provides a clear reason for refusing the development, or any adverse impacts of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when assessed against the policies in the framework taken as a whole. And as I spoke earlier, again, this is the tilted balance. With regards to the amount of development, while some changes would be required to ground levels to form a development platform, it is considered that it is possible that 2 dwellings of relatively modest scale could be adequately located on the application site, with space for vehicle manoeuvring, parking, gardens and landscaping. The scale and type of any such dwelling would, however, be constrained by site levels, trees and landscape characteristics. The adverse impacts of the development relate solely to its conflict with policy BNE3 in locational and land use terms. Whilst BNE3 is broadly consistent with the framework, it is also out of date as it safeguards land based on the housing requirement in policy 4, which is out of date. The conflict with policy BNE3 is therefore only afforded very limited weight in the planning balance. In terms of benefits, the applicant has identified economic benefits from the creation of work in the construction industry, estate agents and furniture sales, and increasing the population, which will increase the expenditure available to local businesses and tax income for the local authority from council tax. Social benefits identified by the applicant cover aspects of contributing towards the shortfall in housing supply in the borough. The applicant is of the view that the site is in a sustainable location between an allocated housing site to the east and existing dwellings to the west. They identify that the site is located approximately 100 metres to the east of the built-up area of Whittle-Le-Woods, identified as an urban local service centre in the Central Lancashire Local Plan, containing a variety of services including food store, village hall, doctor's surgery, pharmacy, primary school, etc. Proximity to the M6 and the M61 motorways is also noted, along with bus stops within 200 metres of the site, providing access to Chorley town centre and other settlements. Reference is also made to outline planning permission for 85 dwellings on adjacent land. The proposal would boost the supply of housing, albeit on a small scale, in a situation where there is no 5-year supply, and as a result, moderate weight can be given to the social benefits of the proposal. It's considered that the economic benefits for the proposal would be minimal and so can be afforded limited weight. It's not considered that the adverse impacts of the proposed development relating to conflict with policy BNE3 of the local plan would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the economic and social benefits of the proposals, and as such, it is recommended that the application is approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Adele. Peter, would you like to speak now, please?
I'm Peter Hyam, Whittle-Le-Woods Parish Council. Nothing has changed since the last refusal 2 years ago. It's still safeguarded land. It's still a single-track country lane with no public footpath. It is a designated cycle route, and there are many dog walkers as well as organised groups who walk that lane. It's a very busy pedestrian lane, and the housing requirement has not changed. 100% of the neighbours and the parish council are against this scheme. When I say 100% of neighbours, there's only 3. One thing that is different is the appeal decision at Eccleston, which seems to have frightened the council into refusing anything. However, the appeal at Town Lane Whittle-Le-Woods was a plus point on your behalf, and you did very well there. You need to refuse again. If you see this site, you will understand that it's not one for development. And therefore, if you, at the very least, could I ask for a site visit? Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, would you like to speak now, please?
To speak on behalf of the applicant, Mr Berry, in respect of the permission in principle for 2 houses. The site was previously subject to a permission in principle application, which was refused in March 21. It was refused solely because the site is designated as safeguarded land in the local plan. In respect to the application before you today, it is important to note that under a permission in principle, there are only 3 specific elements for consideration: land use, amount and location. In respect of land use, the proposal is for a residential use of the site for up to 2 dwellings. The neighbouring use is a residential to the east, and a planning permission for over 80 dwellings on land to the west. The houses identified on the illustrative plan for the development for up to 80 houses come right up to the boundary of the application site. The site is designated as safeguarded land, which is acknowledged by the council as being suitable for development. The site being sandwiched between existing and approved residential development would indicate that residential use is acceptable. In respect of amount, the application is for up to 2 dwellings. This is a density of approximately 10 dwellings per hectare. This is a level of development which reflects the surroundings and represents a suitable amount of development for the site. In terms of location, the site is designated safeguarded land. However, Chorley is unable to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, and as such it's accepted that the safeguarded land policy, BNE3, is out of date. The application site is a sustainable location, as it's been previously recognised by the council in the approval of over 80 dwellings on the site immediately adjacent to the application site. The site is significantly more sustainable than the Springfields Sandy Lane site, which was approved earlier this evening, which benefits from no footpath and not within walking distance of any real services. The objector also references a number of people walking their dogs, etc., up the road, clearly indicating that it's a safe means of people leaving and walking from the site. The applicant shares the planning officer's view that there are no adverse impacts which would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of this proposal, and as such, on this basis, it is respectfully requested that committee grant permission in principle for the erection of 2 dwellings. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, members. Councillor Hilton.
Thank you, Chair. To say that the council's been frightened into making decisions, I don't believe it's correct. A legal precedent has been made by a number of appeals against this council, public inquiries. So a hell of a lot has changed since the last application. Policy 4 of the core strategy is out of date. Policy BNE 3 is out of date. The landscape has changed significantly. The tilted balance is in favour of development here, and we do have a shortfall of housing supply. So looking at the tilted balance, we have to look at this very carefully in terms of the legal precedent that has been made. It's a modest development, and I'm unfortunately going to have to agree with the officers here, and I will propose officer recommendations for the reasons set out in the report quite clearly by the officers. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Derbyshire.
Yeah, I think I'd like to support exactly what Councillor Hilton said there. And actually, I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name. But actually, when you said about that you approved of one thing and then the other, I don't think it's up to you to approve or not or disapprove. I think that's the job of the planning committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to mention it? Councillor Heaton, Councillor Morwood.
Yeah, I think I heard the agent say there's outline permission for 85 dwellings on adjacent land. That has been approved, has it?
Adele.
Is that what we're saying?
Sorry. I think reference is just made to it's an historic application. I think it's just making the point that it's not an isolated site and that it's within the context of other sustainable development. It's not about the safeguarded situation.
No, was that on safeguarded land as well?
It's historic, it's going back several years, so it may have been an allocated site at that moment in time under a previous development plan.
Right.
I think also I'll just take this opportunity to remind members that this isn't an application for planning permission, it's a different regime that the government have brought in for simply permission in principle for the issues that were set out previously. But it's just to note that I think that the reference to that historic planning application is the fact that it's not in an unsustainable location.
Okay.
Councillor Morwood.
Thank you, Chair. Just a reminder that safeguarded land does not mean you cannot build on it. It is a kind of misnomer. The name is, it does give that impression that it's safeguarded forever, but it's not. It means that we didn't have to use it if we could prove that we had enough land everywhere else to build the number of houses that we've been told we must build. Far too many houses, agreed, but that's another argument. So it's simply a fact that, as has already been said, our safeguarded land policy has been blown out of the water, not just in one public inquiry, but in at least 2. So We are not frightened. We're just, sadly, having to, yeah, very well put, toe the line. And that's the way it is at the moment. Hopefully we can change that over time, but at the moment, that's where we are, sadly. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else wish to comment? If not, I'll move to the vote. Please. Okay, Taz?
Thank you, Chair. So members have decided to grant permission in principle, subject to conditions in respect of vacant land off Hilltop Lane, Whittle-Le-Woods. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. All my papers. Okay. Moving on to item 3H, land adjacent to Londonderry, Cottage, Wigan Lane, Heath, Charnock, pages 297 to 324 with an update on your addendum. Adele's going to present this item and I have no speakers. Adele, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Just bear with me 1 second. The application site is located on the northern side, northwestern side, sorry, of Wigan Lane in Heath, Charnock, and lies within the Greenbelt, approximately halfway between the settlements of Chorley and Adlington. The site forms a large grassed area of public open space that contains a playing field, small area of hard standing used for car parking and some site cabins. The site surrounds the residential curtilage of Londonderry Cottage on 3 sides. It's owned by Chorley Council and is used by Chorley Bowman Club and Adlington Football Club. The application seeks planning permission to replace the existing buildings with a new purpose-built pavilion, install a new site access from Wigan Lane to the southwest of Londonderry Cottage and create a new car parking area off the new site access. The proposal also includes boundary fencing, new access gates, footpaths and other infrastructure. The proposal is time sensitive as work needs to commence on site in June to secure funding from Sport England for the proposed development. Whilst the site lies just outside the boundary of Charnock Richard Parish Council, they have responded in support of the... It's outside the boundary of Charnock Richard. But we've received comments from them.
Through the chair, please.
I will check on that. It's support from the Parish Council. The occupants of Londonderry Cottage have been in discussion with the council as the applicant, who are the applicant, to move the proposed package sewage treatment plant further away from their property, and the applicant revised the proposed drainage plan accordingly. The National Planning Policy Framework is clear that new buildings are inappropriate development in the Greenbelt, subject to a number of exceptions. Such exceptions include appropriate facilities for outdoor sport and recreation, such as that proposed under the provisions of the current application, providing they preserve the openness of the Greenbelt and do not conflict with the purposes of including land within it. A detailed assessment of the proposal against the criteria of the framework is provided within the committee report, but in summary, the proposal is considered to be inappropriate development in the Greenbelt. This is due to the much larger building proposed compared to the existing buildings and encroachment of the countryside caused by the proposed car park. However, in this instance, it is considered that very special circumstances have been demonstrated by the applicant as detailed in the committee report relating to the provision of a vastly improved facility so it can be enjoyed by a wider range of the population, most notably disabled users. The proposal demonstrably complies with policies BNE1, BNE9 and HW1 of the Chorley Local Plan, Policy 24 of the Central Lancashire Core Strategy and the National Planning Policy Framework in relation to potential impacts upon residential amenity, design, layout, highways impact, ecology, drainage and the provision of sport and recreational facilities. The proposal is therefore recommended for approval subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Adele. Over to you. Councillor Heath.
I welcome the recommendation, Chair. I think it's admirable that some people are improving facilities rather than neglecting them. So I move the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Morwood.
Happy to second that. I think most members are very familiar with this. It's been brought to Executive Cabinet Council on a number of occasions, so happy to second.
Councillor Boardman. Thirded, right, thank you. Adele.
Yeah, apologies, my slip of the pen with my comments. It was Heath Charnock. I think I had
She got the word Charnock.
Yeah,
She got the word Charnock in her head.
Yeah, it was, yeah. Yeah, it is outside the parish boundary, but they have offered support. Thank you.
Okay. Any more comments from anybody? If not, I'll move to the vote. Please. Okay, there you go. Councillor Boardman.
Sorry.
I know. I was watching you. Thought he's not paying attention.
Thank you, Chair. So members have unanimously decided to grant planning permission subject to conditions in respect of land adjacent to Londonderry Cottage, Wigan Lane. Thank you.
Okay, nearly there. Item 3I, 35 Warton Place, Chorley, pages 325 to 348. Amy's going to present this item. And I've one registered speaker as an objector, Barry Simons, who's joining us virtually. Barry, can you hear and speak? Yes.
Yeah,
Amy.
clear.
Thank you. Amy, you want to read the report, please?
The application site relates to a semi-detached dwelling on the eastern side of Warton Place within the settlement of Chorley. Planning permission is sought for a part 2-storey, part single-storey, side and rear extension. Elevational alterations include rendering to the front elevation and the insertion of a new first floor window to the rear elevation. The existing garage to the side of the property would be demolished. Amended plans were requested during the course of the application as the original proposal did not accord with the guidance set out in the Council's Householder Design Guidance SPD, which states that 2-storey rear extensions should not project beyond a 45-degree guideline. The width of the first floor rear element of the extension was reduced and the depth of the ground floor was reduced, and the proposed extension now complies with the 45-degree guideline. One representation of objection has been received from the neighbour to the north at 33 Warton Place on several grounds, including overbearing impact, loss of light and loss of outlook. It is acknowledged that there is a ground floor kitchen window to the side elevation of this neighbouring property, which is an addition as opposed to a standard original feature of this house type, and it's not typical of neighbouring properties in the immediate locality. This property also benefits from an extension to the rear. There would be some loss of light to this window as a result of the proposed development. However, the existing relationship between the two properties is such that existing light levels are already compromised, given the window to the kitchen already faces the gable end of the application property, which is a poor relationship. Any additional light loss caused by the proposed development would be relatively limited, and it is not considered that this would be so severe as to warrant refusal of the application. The 2-storey rear element of the extension would not project beyond a 45-degree guideline when drawn from the near edge of any ground floor rear-facing windows in either of the neighbouring properties at number 33 and number 37 Warton Place, and the single-storey rear element would not project more than 3 metres beyond the 45-degree guideline. Compliance with the 45-degree guideline ensures that a satisfactory relationship is achieved between the proposed extension and the neighbours, and would ensure that this does not result in unacceptable adverse impacts due to loss of light or overbearing impacts to the neighbouring dwellings or associated private amenity areas. There will be a Juliet balcony at first floor level within the rear elevation and a new replacement window to be installed in this elevation. However, these windows would be approximately 44 metres away from the rear site boundary, and there would be no adverse impacts of overlooking or loss of privacy. The extension will be in line with the front elevation of the existing property, and it would match the existing ridge height, whilst it would be of a modest width. This would represent a continuation of the style, form and design of the existing property, and it is not considered that it will be harmful to the street scene. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Barry, would you like to speak now, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. A summary of our representation subjecting to this proposal is included in the report, paragraph 6. I'd like to draw attention to some of these again and provide some additional context. The Council's 2017 SPD clearly states that side extension should be subservient to the parent property, and specifically highlights ridge height as a key way to achieve this subservience. The side extension currently proposed is not subservient, either in terms of height or being sent back in any way. The planning officer recommendation is therefore clearly at variance with the Council's own policy. In relation to light loss, the proposal will lead to significant further loss of light through our ground floor kitchen and first floor windows. Because of the southerly orientation of the side of our property, for a significant part of the day, the sunlight coming into our side windows comes from the direction the proposed extension would block. Both the side and rear extensions would exacerbate this issue. The application report acknowledges this loss and yet states that it is significant. We would dispute that and highlight that not only is the side extension not subservient, it also extends almost double to the rear by blocking a large amount of light that is currently past the rear of the property. This is not helped by the fact that number 35 is already set up slightly back from our property number 33. In the report, the officer notes that our side kitchen window is an addition and not typical of surrounding properties. It's not clear what point the officer is making here. The window is where it is, has been there for a long time. The loss of light is therefore relevant regardless. If typicality is a consideration, then the whole scale of number 35 is itself not typical of surrounding properties and should be considered. The proposed single and double story extension to the side and rear will cause additional privacy to both neighbouring properties at 33 and 37, in addition to creating overbearing impact and a sense of being overlooked. This loss of privacy is in addition to the impacts of a recently constructed large garden room stroke office at the opposite end of the garden of number 35, built under permitted. The combination of proposed large extensions to the rear of the house, together with the garden room, means privacy in our garden will be compromised from both ends. Some of these issues will be best understood by committee members viewing the property on a site visit or any decision is made. Nevertheless, at this juncture, I would urge the committee to refuse this application as is, the reasons given, or to at least agree to significant revisions to make it consistent with the Council's own policies. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Perfect timing. Over to you, members. Councillor Boardman.
Right, I've just had a quick look at the drawings online. The objective is correct, and so is our planning officer, which is nice to see. The proposal is with our SPD. It does clearly say that
Your microphone.
The two-storey side extensions should be set back from the front elevation, and also the ridge height should be slightly lower. However, the planning officer goes on to state that because it's a very narrow extension, and because the proposal is to render the facade of the house, the increase is not, overbearing, and it doesn't have a detrimental impact, seen as the adjacent property, which it's attached to, is significantly wider anyway than the one we're looking at. So I think sometimes we have to look at the SPDs and put it into practice with the proposal that's in front of us. And yes, it is on a couple of points at odds with our SPD, but I think in whole it's a pretty good design. I understand the concerns of the adjacent neighbour. I would happily move to support the officer's recommendation on this one, but I'd also happily go and have a site visit as well.
Which are you doing?
Which are you proposing?
I'm going to propose the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Marwood.
Happy to second that proposal. Yes, I entirely agree with what Councillor Boardman said. Yeah, and I say, yes, happy to support.
Okay. Any more comments, Councillor Sherwood? Okay. Any more comments from anybody? No? Okay, I'll move to the vote, please. All those in favour, please show. Oh, it all goes at once.
So members have decided to grant planning permission. So members of the committee have decided to grant planning permission subject to conditions in respect of 35 Warton Place, Chorley. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Moving on, item 4 is the appeal, planning appeals and decisions.
Oh, you win some, you lose some.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, to note the appeals, particularly in terms of the appeal that's been submitted for the proposed prison. Because of the timing of events, it's only been possible to report this formally to committee this evening, given the cancellation of previous committees. Just to make members aware that there is a public inquiry scheduled for July. The applicant is going to be hosting a website where all the evidence and core documents and supporting information will be readily accessible, and as soon as I get details of where that can be viewed, I will share that with you. And then the only other one that I really want to mention is the proposal for the football dome at Parklands High School. Members will know that I will always, comment on applications that are allowed at appeal that have been refused contrary to officer recommendation. This is an example of an application that was actually recommended for approval, and members took an alternative viewpoint, felt there was harm, identified harm and was refused, and the inspector has dismissed the appeal. So this is why we need planning committees and planning officers to be to scrutinise applications, and that was the only other one I wanted to comment on. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.